O Yahweh, Kuma, Yahweh, Wayafuso o Yezeata, Wayanuso Misanecha Bituniacha.
You're obviously not aware of this, but blessed is not a word that the global majority thinks of in association with Europeans. Words like plague and colonizer, maybe, but not blessed. And the cell phone in my hand came from China. So I don't know if you're referencing Steve Jobs or Martin Cooper or the Finnish inventor who created the first pocket-sized telecommunication device in 1917, and you probably don't know either because your education system has left you terribly ignorant and without the critical thinking skills necessary to effectively gather information. Because you believe that most great inventions can be attributed to one white person, as opposed to recognizing that the patent system is how white people colonize intellectual property. We would not have cell phones if it wasn't for the creation of the gamma electrical cell by black inventor Henry T. Sampson. And most of our cell phones would not have microphones in them if it wasn't for the particular microphone that was created by black inventor James Edward West. The creation of the first digital network, 1G, was launched in Japan, and then black electrical engineer Jesse Russell pioneered the creation of 2G, which launched in Finland first. 3G launched in Japan, 4G launched in Norway, 5G launched in South Korea, and 30% of the world's cell phones are manufactured in China. Because we, of the global majority, recognize that collective humanity has the ingenuity and creativity of one another to thank, whereas a lot of European Americans are laboring under the delusion that the rest of us have white people to thank. And it's this narcissistic ignorance that causes people like you to do embarrassing things, like leaving comments about Europeans and cell phones on a video about systemic anti-black racism in the United States. And while that could be written off as a comedic and senile non sequitur, we recognize it as a desperate attempt to center yourself in a conversation that has nothing to do with you. The irony being that white people like to say not all white people and they shouldn't be held accountable for the misdeeds of their ancestors, yet they want to be associated with the greatness of the things that they think they invented.
Castillo Vaughn is going viral for his deteriorating medical condition inside an Alabama state prison system that had to remove his internal intestines because they were starving him to death. Castillo's treatment, by the way, is the norm for all inmates, where both men and women that are incarcerated are treated like slaves in order to make cheap furniture and license plates and like shit they can sell on Shopify. Like, I'm not even exaggerating a little bit. The purpose of the Alabama prison system is to incarcerate as many people as possible for free labor. Disguised as a work training program, Alabama gets paid on both ends. On the one side, it takes money from the government in order to accommodate inmates, but on the other hand, it uses inmates as slave labor to make stuff to sell to other prisons and big box retailers. That's an office chair. They're selling office chairs. After Castillo's emergency surgery went viral, inmates in 6 different prisons decided to go on strike. They're not making shit for free anymore. And what did the wardens do? They decided to starve them too. So now they're getting 2 meals a day of this instead of 3. Okay, I exaggerated. Sometimes they get this. And for all the people that are like, oh, I did a little bit of time, my food wasn't that much better than the pictures, just a reminder, they've cut their meals from 3 to 2. 30% of their calories are taken out, and only one of our meals in the morning was cold. The rest of them were hot, like we got enough calories to get us over to 2,000. They're now consuming less than 1,000 every day. Like, for fuck's sake, that's just the ends of the bread. Families of inmates have noticed the deteriorating health conditions of their loved ones, and when they complained, this is how the state responded.
Canceling all inmate visitation this weekend and are urging prisoners to update their loved ones with the change. Well, the prisoner stoppages actually are taking place at about half a dozen men's prisons across Alabama. Yesterday, the Department of Corrections announced it is also limiting the number of daily meals for inmates to 2. It claims both the meal limits and visitation cancellation are not retaliation for the strike, but a byproduct of not having enough staff to handle those services without the necessary inmate workers.
Translation: we depend on slave labor so that we can use the profits to hire people to feed them. There's over 122 for-profit prisons in the state of Alabama, and none of them can be investigated for human rights abuses because they're private, and this is the reason why Alabama's so hard up to turn a profit with slave labor. The living conditions for the men and women stuck inside the Alabama prison system were so bad that Wall Street didn't even want to touch them. They didn't care if they were turning a profit. They're like, nah, we're not risking the PR. And there were publicly traded companies like Core Civics that used to own these Alabama prisons that were like, oh man, you guys are taking this shit too far, we're out of here. Like, for fuck's sake, when George Bush Sr. has to file a 126-page commission on how badly women are getting raped inside your prison system, shit's bad, man. Shit, I'm actually going out of order. There was so much corruption. I forgot to tell you that all the executives use the money that's supposed to be used to feed the inmates towards like cars and rent and like legal fees. Here, just to close out on how Alabama is codependent on slave labor and overcrowding their prisons, they used the COVID relief funds that they got from 2021 to build 2 new prisons because Wall Street backed out of building them.
Alabama, which happens to have the highest death rate from coronavirus in the United States, is planning to use federally provided coronavirus relief funds to construct prisons.
Rise up you, O Yahweh. Let your enemies be scattered, and let those that hate thee flee from before thee. Give him thanks by saying hallelujah.